gonna try to bounce through some stuff.
Speed.
Sorry.
No, that's no problem. I'm gonna try to get to the points that I think are kind of important here. Okay, so like here, make sure that you go ahead and you cover all of your door locks, because what we're dealing with is basically it's a corrosive, right? So if it gets inside that door lock, when that customer comes home at the end of the day, they try to stick their key in there, that quickly it can affect that door lock to where you can't get your key in anymore.
You're not worried about the rest of the knob, just the...
I'm not worried about the rest of the knob, depending on what it's made out of. Okay, we're gonna flip through a couple of things here, and I'll show you.
If you forget that WD-40.
Yeah.
I keep that on my trailer.
What was the separate bank account?
What's what?
Went through one that said have a separate bank account.
Oh, the separate bank account was basically because it's not if you're ever going to damage something, it's when you're going to damage something. Okay, if you're in this industry long enough, it's not necessarily about the bleach. It's not necessarily about your hoses. You might step on something and break something. One of my guys dropped a big vase. You know, he shouldn't have been moving it by himself. I've got rules that they're not supposed to, but they do it. Right? So something is eventually going to happen, and you don't necessarily run out to your insurance policy every single time. So sometimes you just got to pull it out of your pocket and deal with it. And so it's a good, I mean, for me, I want to maintain about $1,500 to $2,500 in that account, okay, before I feel like I'm comfortable. Because anything over that, I'm probably turning it into the insurance company. It just depends. And then like taping off doors. So this door here, this is a stain door. SH bleach affects the stain very, very quickly. Okay, so this is going to be something I'm going to cover instead of just trying to rinse it or whatever the case may be. You also have to look at
painter's tape.
We don't use the blue painter's tape. The reason that we don't use the blue painter's tape is because although it doesn't stick as well, and so when you pull it, you're less likely to peel the paint on the door or peel the coating off the door. The problem is it doesn't stick well enough to hold up to the weight of the plastic when it gets wet. So then it all peels off anyhow.
Is that painter's plastic?
That's painter's plastic. That's the cheap painter's plastic. It comes in a 9 by 12 foot roll. Yeah, we take the 9 foot roll. It comes 12 foot long, but 9 foot wide. So when we unroll it, the roll is only about that wide, right? So I'm going to roll it across the door this way and cut it, and I know when I open it up, it's 9 foot. So and that's an 8 foot door, 8 foot door, and I know I got room left over, kind of thing. And then also some of this is getting into lead and leaded glass. Make sure, like when you're dealing with lead, it'll tarnish lead, like right now. So like if you're doing a big church or whatever, sometimes you got to watch that leaded glass so you don't tarnish it with your SH.
Leaded like
stained glass, yeah. The lead in it, not the stain part.
So it's not the painter's tape. What type of tape?
We use the painter's tape, but we don't use the blue painter's tape. Like I think Tim uses on stucco the red tape. We don't use the red tape. It's not as effective for us or whatever. We don't use it on everything. I see his stuff with all kind of red stuff on it. And then this is sometimes after you spray bleach on certain things, you can fix it. Like in the next picture here. Again, I'm gonna try to go real quick because they're gonna kick us out in like 10 minutes. We used Murphy's oil soap on this. You can use a lot of different like oils and stuff. I don't like WD-40, which I know a lot of people use. The main reason I don't like WD-40 is because it leaves kind of an oily appearance to it, I find. So the Murphy's oil soap really has worked well for us. It's something that we carry on the trucks because we clean the wood doors with it.
And what is that stain called again?
This here, that's just a reaction from the bleach. That's taking the coating off of the metal.
Oh, okay.
You're just taking Murphy's oil on a rag and...
Basically, yeah. So here we might make anywhere from say a 10% to a 50% mix, depends on what we're dealing with. Over time you get to learning, okay, this works really well. Most of the time you just take Murphy's oil soap, water, and on a rag, wipe it down, and it'll come out looking nice.
You don't rinse it off?
I don't rinse it off. I'm actually wiping it into the surface kind of thing. What's that?
I guess you don't put water on top of it.
Oh, and the thing is, like, because we use Murphy's oil soap for doors a lot, and so we're cleaning it with the Murphy's oil. You're leaving the soap behind because it's an oil and a soap kind of thing. And then this one here, like, you got to watch your wind drift. This is actually way inside in an indoor kitchen. Okay, and so something like this, I don't know if you've ever heard of One Restore. Again, I'm not pitching a product, but One Restore works really well at restoring that. Same thing with this next picture. You asked about, do we cover some, doorknobs or not covering them? Some of them, yeah. It depends on what you're dealing with. This should have been covered. right?
Like,
But it
I mean,
wasn't.
Doorbells and stuff that are $200, $250 for a doorbell.
Right, yeah, if I'm concerned with it, I'm covering it, just because I don't want to buy it.
Rings an
Because-
expensive lesson.
Yeah, I've learned too many expensive lessons. I don't need to, I really don't need to learn any more expensive lessons. I will, but I don't feel like I need to.
I'll say real
Sir-
quick on those doorknobs too. Make sure you look at those when you finish. We had a bigger job, but I showed up to see the customer. Unfortunately, I noticed it before she did, and I fixed the fact that my guys didn't rinse the knob off.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was a.
The other thing, we use stainless steel cleaner,
Mhm.
right? You can buy it in the little, and they're like pads that you pull out. So they're like dryer sheets that you pull out of a little tube, right? We'll use those on like brass lanterns and all that, just to clean up the brass, or sometimes to clean up like the metal if something happens. It works well as well.
Sheila Shine?
What's that?
Sheila Shine?
I don't remember the name of it. It's just a, like I said, it's a stainless steel cleaner, and we use it to wipe down stainless steel, and then we'll use it for things like that. Streaks on posts, things like this here, that actually comes from, bird poop, bat poop, droppings from any kind of little critter that you got running around, So what happens is in the very top of the post right there, it's open, and animals go up inside there, they poop, and then the water, you start spraying your mix, your water gets up inside there, it starts running down. It might look awesome the day you leave, the homeowner's happy, they cut you your check, and then the next day they call you up and they're like, hey, what's all this stuff coming down off of here? It's actually very easy to get rid of, but a lot of people, I mean, I've seen my guys up there just scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing and getting nowhere, right? Again, this is an organic, and if it's dried, you want to get it wet first, and sometimes we'll take a little 1% SH, you wipe it and you leave it set for a second. Let the SH do its job, because this really is about patience in a lot of things, which I don't have. And then you can go back with a wet cloth and wipe it off, and that stuff just goes away. The thing is, if you don't give it enough time to allow all the water to quit dripping, you're going to clean it and it's going to come right back, right? Once you notice something like that, then it's also about educating the homeowner, and for me, it's about coming back and making sure the homeowner knows I'm going to take care of it, no matter what. I'll tell them hold the whole check. I don't care. We're going to come back, take care of it, then you pay us. I want you to be happy. That's it.
You'll just clean that up with a rag when you come back.
Yeah, we might use SH in water.
Right.
We might use just water. It just depends on how bad it is, and how badly it's dried, and all that kind of fun stuff.
You don't even have to bring a machine or a trailer. You just
No, I'll go buy in my sales rig. I'll bring a squirt bottle with some 1% SH in it.
now that it's dried up,
Yeah.
you can clean that spot.
I already know. I mean, it's an easy thing to take care of. Think about where your hoses are, where your feet are walking. Make sure you're using Do you know what a ladder stabilizer is? It's like the bullhorns that come off. Use those to help protect your rain gutters, all that kind of fun stuff. I also encourage people to not walk the same path over and over again. You create a mud trail. I'm done. We're just talking. Yeah. Yeah. He's probably the same thing with me. He didn't know. What's that?
Oh, he's actually out front. No, he's out front. No, not at all. No.
Josh is doing it.
No, he's out front.
So another thing to keep in mind is that, so if you take some water and you drop it on concrete, what happens initially right away? It just comes, it's a bubble. It doesn't necessarily go anywhere if you just take a little drop. You take bleach and you just drop it on the concrete, what happens? Same thing, it just sits there as a little bubble. You take bleach and water, you mix them together, you drop it on the concrete, what happens? It just sits there as a little bitty bubble. You add a little bit of soap, surfactant to it, what happens? Boop, it dissipates out. That surfactant breaks the surface tension, right? Which allows it to spread out like that. And we add the surfactant to help us stick to the roof and that sort of thing. We're also sticking better to the plants. We're creating a situation that is more likely to damage the plant because we've got the surfactant in there than if we didn't have the surfactant in there, but we need the surfactant, right?
For the roof.
So yeah, you have to, well, even for your house wash, you need the surfactant. But remember that with whatever type of plant you're dealing with. And pre-wet, then rinse, right? So like with what we do, we use the booster pump and the proportioner, right? So what we do is it takes about 55 seconds for our chemical to get to the end of our hose, right? So when I say give me chems and I've got water coming, I'm pre-wetting all of my plants, right? At about the 40-second mark, and it's just a mental, I know times in my head. Then I start spraying it at the ground. As soon as I start having soap come out, I know that I'm on chemicals. I spray all of my areas. I go back to water, I spray it on the ground. As soon as I get no more soap, I go back and I rinse my plants, right? So that way I'm pre-wetting and I'm rinsing right now, right? House wash versus the sun. Let me get to a specific picture on some of this. All right, so this right here, somebody in this room is going to recognize this.
I didn't do it. My guys did it, but this
So,
was bad, and we're replacing them.
In this, and we talked about this, what was the percentage of mix that was actually used on this? Was it 1%, 2%? You know, the guy said 1%. He's thinking 2%, 3%, whatever. 1% could have done this because two things. There was a fresh planting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fresh plantings want more water. They're willing to absorb more stuff, right? So that's number one. It was a fresh planting. You've got to look at that kind of thing. Make sure that it's not a fresh planting. So number two, that they probably didn't pre-wet and they probably didn't rinse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that SH sat on there for how long? Even if it was 1% mix, it could have sat there long enough with this fresh planting, hot sun, nice and dry out, right?
Yep.
It's wanting to absorb. And if you notice, it's just on the very back side of this plant. It's not all the way around it. The plant's not dead.
It was
it's
the overspray
burned.
from both walls, and they just didn't touch it.
Yeah, they just didn't rinse, right? Even if they weren't necessarily spraying and getting stuff on those plants, they hit the wall and it's going to splash back, right? You still need to rinse. Dilution's a solution to the pollution. The water is your best friend in this industry.
That one looks like it's got a gutter right behind it too. We were washing the roof.
Mhm.
You'd have a lot of runoff right at
Right.
that roof.
If this is not from the roof, though. If this
No,
was
this
from
is-
the
this
roof,
is
the whole
just a
thing would be
house wash.
dying.
But
right?
to that point, if this was a roof wash, you bag the gutter, and then when we would leave that, we would leave the plastic diverting that. I would rather kill his grass or even put it a few feet into his mulch than put it right at the base of that.
It looked like he buried it under the mulch.
A lot of times they do, and that's actually in
And that's
here a little
where-
bit
yeah.
later on, because most of those piping systems that they're using are perforated.
Mhm.
Okay, and what happens is your plants want what? They want water.
Sure.
They're going to start your root system is going to go out and it's going to find a water source, right? That's what it wants. And so it finds this nice little area that usually has water flowing through it, and it roots into that. So your trees will root into it, your bushes will root into it, you know, all that kind of stuff. Then you run your hot mix through there, and it's in that plant, and there's nothing you can do at that point. You've killed it, okay? So running water, or like in that particular picture, if I can back up to it. Is that the one? Yeah. So these here, we're going to pull that off of there. A lot of times people have screws in them and all that. We're going to pull that off of there. If we can't, for whatever reason, we're going to clog the gutter up top. We're going to fill the rain gutter full of water. That way it's diluting that as it comes, and we may let it overflow into a different area. The one thing about it is when you overflow a gutter, it's not going to overflow uniformly across the whole thing. It's going to find the low spot, which is right above the prize rose bush every single time, right?
Or the Japanese maple.
Or Japanese maple, or whatever it is. Okay, the easiestly damaged plant is where it drains to, just the way it is. I think God designs it that way. But anyhow, so then you've got to cover those plants and create a runoff program for that. There's occasions where you can take, if you know that you're fairly safe, again, we fill that rain gutter full of water, right? You shouldn't have a whole bunch of runoff anyhow. You really shouldn't, okay? It's about learning how to spray. But then you're taking and you're diluting right away. Then what we do, we got the rain gutter full of water, we got, you know, the sauces in there. We're going to pull the plug, and mind you, before we've ever done this, we already ran a bunch of water through that drain. We might pull the plug and stick our hose down inside there at the same time, full blast, okay? So now we've got all this diluted stuff, heavily diluted, and it's got to rinse out really, really quick, right? That's one of the ways we do
One
it.
thing too is they get it with a lot of water beforehand, so they're
Yes.
not
You
thirsty.
soak that flower bed,
Yeah.
obviously.
But and
You
it's
brought
not
up the
just the
point of
leaves.
bagging the gutters. What do you do with the water or the mix that's in the bag?
You find a good spot that
Yeah, you
nothing's
find a good
alive
spot
in.
to get rid of it.
If you're cleaning the driveway, that's the perfect spot.
Dump on
I'm gonna skip some of these to go to something that's dealing with what you're talking about.
Back to the
All right.
Tyvek real quick. Make sure that whatever side that you put, you know, we use the Lowe's knockoff version of Tyvek. letters are always up, or the letters are always down. Make sure that your staff always does that way, because if you take
Don't
from
buy
one,
the stuff he buys. Buy Tyvek.
Buy the Tyvek. Okay.
Buy the Tyvek. You ain't got to worry about that. Carlos is here.
But-
He's going to kick me. He said that.
No, continue talking.
The house
We're not-
wrap, the
we're not
white
even
carpeting
going
that
ready
he's
yet.
on there.
We're not even sure
But
the
just
keynote's
saying
even
that
gonna happen.
whatever
Yeah,
the
everybody's
top side
still in
is,
the,
either the printed side
Still
or
in
the
the,
white side, but it should be the
the
same.
equipment
Keynote
room,
has
if
to
you
have
will. So feel free, Dougie Do.
It doesn't, but it just
All right.
looks bad if you get bleach on the.
So let me catch this drain, then we'll go back to the Tyvek real quick. So if you look at this here, this is what we'll put on a lot of the downspouts, okay? This comes in a 1,000-foot roll. It's called rain drain, and you can cut it to whatever length you need. You can divert it out there. Plus, the other thing that we can do, we take that in 15 and 20-foot sections, right? We roll up the ends, we clamp it, we fill it full of water, roll the end, clamp it. That way the sauce comes down from the rain gutter, goes inside there, it's instantly diluted. We can rock it back and forth and let it go, kind of thing. Make sense? All right, so back to the Tyvek.
Amazon.
Power wash store, Amazon, okay.
What was your question about Tyvek?
All of it.
Just the whole thing.
Yeah,
All right.
Walked in.
You tell me when, Carlos.
Continue.
Here, I want this prime
You need to
spot
go,
right
you can
here.
buy me a
That's
beer
it
and come
taken.
back.
There you go.
So,
I got to buy the beer.
You're pretty. You sit there.
What are you trying to say?
All right, so
I mean, let's be honest.
okay, good. All right, so with the Tyvek, I prefer the Tyvek over anything else because black plastic gets hot, it heats up, right? Heats your plants up, and it will burn your plants fast, just as fast as your SH will. Okay. Same thing with clear plastic. Clear plastic creates the greenhouse effect, which then will burn your plants and do damage to it. The Tyvek doesn't do that. Okay. In our area, we have hardly any rain gutters, so we get a lot of. And the other thing is that I can walk up underneath the shade tree, and the heat's the same because of the humidity, right? Here, the Tyvek is actually cooler underneath. Dig? Plus, I love this because the neighbors always notice it. So sometimes even when we don't have to use the Tyvek, we use it because it makes them notice. So what we do is the Tyvek rolls come 150 foot by 9 foot. They're 9 foot. 150 foot. We'll take a section and we'll cut it right in half, and that creates basically a 4-foot section that we can run all the way along the foundation of the house where the overhang is, right, where your eave is at. We'll use clamps from Home Depot, right, and I'll show you how those clamps. So basically, what we're doing is we're just grabbing a piece of the plant, we're clamping it, and the next thing we'll do is we'll put water down, like on the edges where they come over, and then that water holds the weight of the water holds that Tyvek in place. You want to use your clamps and you want to use the water, and the reason that you do is even your ground guy, as he's spraying, creates a little airflow and it pushes that tarp off, right, with this plastic. So putting that clamp on there helps hold it in place.
When you clamp it just to a plant or?
Yeah, we're clamping it just to a plant. If there's not something, or we might take one of our buckets and some water and clamp it right to the bucket. Here, this is something that, again, one of the reasons I really love Tyvek. So this house here, he's got on both sides of the house, they've got the valleys drained right on top of these big things, right? So we charged them $75 a piece to cover them. It took us about 5 minutes per side by just taking the Tyvek, getting the right height, take our poles, roll them up, clamp them, set them up there, done, right? So we made good money off of that. The other thing that we do with our Tyvek is we run it down along the whole length of the house. We'll take our hose, any bib that we're not using, because we're obviously using several of them, and we just let the water flow, because if there's enough water in there, it can't absorb any mix. You follow me? And then, like this picture right here, it looks a lot worse than it is, okay? So I like to use it in the instance of coffee. If you take coffee and you add a little bit of cream to it, it changes the whole color of it right away, even without putting that much in. So most of that is water, but it doesn't look like it. Right? It's the sauce coming off, but it's very little. So, and it's all about dilution. So when we put our Tyvek down, we go ahead and flood that thing with water. And then, like, if we've got hoses hooked up all the way around, we'll take that hose, just leave it run there as we walk off and go do something else, and it's flooding the ground. When I'm selling to my customers, I'm selling them with mow a day or two before we come, because you're not going to mow for a day or two after, because we use so much water, right? And that way, because we're going to flood that out, because the theory there is that if the root system is completely saturated with water, it doesn't want anything else, right? Then when you get into, so what we do with the Tyvek when we're done, I thought I just saw that picture. There it is. Going too fast. We take it, we rinse them off, both sides, we fold them, roll them up, we put them inside our tubs, and that's how we are able to keep them up. The Tyvek lasts anywhere from say 6 to 8 months, and for us it's used on roofs daily, and it'll last about 6 to 8 months before it's so deteriorated that it just tears. And don't buy the cheap stuff. I'm worrying that. And then you always got to watch your corners on your rain gutters and your elbows and all that, because sometimes they leak.
You don't buy the cheap stuff?
I buy the cheap stuff. Why? Because it leaks.
Okay. I don't know if it.
If I'm spending $150 on a roll of Tyvek, okay, that's going to last me, 6 to 8 months, or I can spend $89 or something like that on the cheaper stuff, right? But then I kill one plant because it just doesn't work as well. It's like Rob was just saying, you have to make sure that where it says lows is actually up, because that stuff is designed to allow moisture to travel one direction but not the other, right? So if you put it the wrong way, you're feeding the plants the stuff that you're trying to protect them from.
I don't know if the blue.
Don't buy the cheap stuff. It's the same thing with buying an exterior cleaner. Don't buy the cheap one. That's kind of how I look at it. That's over. So here, like this, when we've got, this is in a valley area. You ready, Carlos?
No, take your time. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to take my time. I
We're
want
still
you.
waiting
I
for
want you.
people- We're still waiting for people to show up.
All right.
Mine's not gonna take an hour, so we're not gonna go over. I know everybody's tired and stuff like that. It's almost time for chow. This is important stuff here.
I think they want to hear you more important. All right. So anyhow, like here, this is right in where a valley comes in. We've got a plant right there. So we've taken our Tyvek, we covered the plant, we take it down and we've brought it into a bucket. So now anything that's coming down from that valley is really being forced into that tub, no matter what it does, right? The other thing that we've done here is with this hose pipe connection, we've taken that, we break it loose, and so it's spewing water, not spewing, but it's making sure, if you notice on this one here, it actually, all the roots are sitting right here, right? I don't want to put the SH on the roots, so I'm doing what I can. This did have I think this had no, this didn't have a gutter above it, but not sure why, for all of a sudden there's no Tyvek down there, but might have been because I took the picture that way, I don't know. And then you also have to look at the types of plants. Just like people with allergies, sometimes people are more sensitive to things. Certain plants are more sensitive to the SH than others. So here, like this here, there was no rain gutter on this side of the house, and it created a burn line here. And then later on, it came back and it actually killed that plant, but the other ones are still nice and hardy. They didn't even affect them. So very little SH was able to kill that plant.
That's a banana.
What's that?
That's like a cyan banana. That's not, I mean,
Yeah.
50 degrees and it'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that one wasn't coming back, trust me.
Yeah.
That one was, most of the time, in the winter they die, they come right back the next year.
Yep.
That one wasn't coming back. I actually cut it to where I was hoping it would come back, but then it didn't come back. And then that's that rain drain stuff. So here, sometimes if you get it in and the grass is kind of dying off, maybe from a downspout drain or whatever, there are different products out there. I don't know if Agent Holt does the whole plant saving thing, but like even using Miracle Grow, which I've heard don't use Miracle Grow with SH, but it's a water thing. Miracle Grow was actually what we used here, especially because it was in a pinch, and it actually came back fairly quickly. As long as you know, grass is really, really hardy, so it'll come back fairly quick. Electrical items. This is Ray Burke. This is one of his pictures. So these are all 100% waterproof boxes, right? Yeah, 100% waterproof. That could have. So it actually looks like 2 of those blew out. Okay, he could have saved himself the hassle on that just by putting tape across the back side. You put your tape fastened to the wall, and then coming down over the top of the electrical item, and boom, you're good to go. Make sense? Right?
Hello.
Thank you, Doug.
We're gonna run.
Anybody here not aware of the charity dinner tonight? So everybody